Hey everyone, have you ever felt invisible at your own job? The one who does all the work but Hey everyone, have you ever felt invisible at your own job? The one who does but never gets the credit, while the loud ones in the meeting get all the praise? It's a frustrating feeling, like you're screaming into a void. But what if that quiet focus, that determination you're building in the shadows, is actually your greatest strength? This is a story for anyone who's ever been underestimated, overlooked, or just plain ignored. It's about the ultimate workplace comeback, where the quiet girl in the corner doesn't just get a seat at the table, she buys the whole company. If you're ready for a story of silent, stunning revenge, you're in the right place. So get comfortable. And hey, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because you are not going to want to miss this takeover. Let us know in the comments if you've ever been the quiet one at work. Now, let's get into the story. The office of Innovate Solutions hummed with a specific kind of energy. The sound of keyboards clacking, phones buzzing, and the loud performative voices of the go-getters who treated the open-plan floor like their personal stage. And in the far corner, tucked away by the printer that always jammed, sat Clara. To her colleagues she was the quiet girl, a non-entity, a ghost in a cubicle. Her boss, Brad, a man who wore expensive ties and talked in management buzzwords, never remembered her name. "Hey you," he'd say, snapping his fingers in her direction. "The data for the quarterly report. I need it in an hour." He'd then turn to his favorite, Chloe, and loudly discuss his golf game, as if Clara had already vanished. Clara never minded the silence. In fact, she cherished it. While others were in endless circular meetings talking about synergy and blue sky thinking, she was actually doing the work. She was the one who untangled the messy datasets, who found the errors in the code that no one else could see, who wrote the elegant, efficient reports that Brad would then present as his own. She was the foundation of her department, and they were all building their flashy houses on top of her, completely unaware of the rock-solid ground beneath them. Her cubicle mate, Sarah, was one of the few who saw it. "You're a wizard, Clara," she'd whisper, leaning over the partition. "Brad's presentation was a mess until you fixed the analytics. He didn't even say thank you." Clara would just smile faintly and adjust her glasses. The work is its own reward. It was a mantra she'd repeated since college. A shield against the constant erasure of her contributions. The company's annual review day was a masterclass in this erasure. One by one, employees were called into the glass-walled conference room. Clara watched as Chloe emerged, beaming, having negotiated a raise based on her stellar performance on the Johnson account. The account Clara had single-handedly saved with a last-minute software patch she'd coded over a weekend. When it was Clara's turn, Brad barely looked up from his phone. "Clara, good, solid work. Very reliable." He slid a piece of paper across the table. "A standard 2% cost of living raise. The same as everyone else. Keep it up. We value steady contributors." Steady. It was the corporate synonym for unremarkable. She was a piece of office furniture. Dependable, but utterly replaceable. She went back to her desk, the paper feeling heavy and insulting in her hand. Sarah gave her a sympathetic look. "What did you get?" Clara just showed her the number. "You're kidding me? After the Johnson account? After you debugged the entire payroll system last month? You should have demanded more." "It's fine," Clara said, her voice barely a whisper. But for the first time, it wasn't fine. The quiet in her soul wasn't peaceful anymore. It was simmering. She looked around the office, at the preening peacocks and the oblivious management, and a small, defiant thought took root. What if her quiet wasn't a weakness, but a strategic advantage? What if she was building something here, in the shadows, that they couldn't even comprehend? She didn't know it yet, but the ghost was about to learn how to haunt. The economic downturn hit the tech sector, like a sudden frost. A nervous energy replaced the usual office buzz. Whispers of restructuring and streamlining flitted through the air like ghosts. Clara, ever observant, saw the signs before anyone else. The sudden hiring freeze. The canceled vendor contracts. The closed-door meetings among the senior partners that lasted for hours. She didn't panic. Instead, she started quietly backing up her personal work files to a secure cloud drive. The unique scripts she'd written, the efficiency algorithms she'd designed in her spare time, the contacts she'd made with key clients who actually knew it was her, not Brad, solving their problems. The axe fell on a rainy Friday afternoon. An all-hands meeting was called. The CEO, a man named Robert who was rarely seen, stood on a small platform, his face grim. "Team," he began, his voice echoing in the silent room. "Innovate Solutions has been a family, but even families have to make tough decisions to survive." He talked about market pressures, shareholder expectations, and the need for agility. Then he delivered the killing blow. "As part of this strategic pivot, we will be undergoing a workforce reduction. Approximately 20% of our positions are being eliminated. Those affected will be notified by their managers within the hour. A collective gasp rippled through the room. People looked at each other, their faces pale with fear. Back at her cubicle, Clara's heart was a frantic drum. She watched as Brad walked out of his office, a small stack of white envelopes in his hand. He looked like a man playing a grim game of Santa Claus. He stopped at Chloe's desk. Her face fell, and she burst into tears. He moved on, handing out envelopes like death sentences. Then he came to her. He didn't look sad or apologetic. He looked almost bored. "Clara," he said, placing the envelope on her desk. "I'm sorry it had to be you. You're a solid worker. But we have to keep the talent that drives the business forward. HR has all the details about your severance." He gave her a pat on the head smile. "I'm sure you'll land on your feet." And with that, he walked away to deliver the next pink slip. Clara picked up the envelope. Her hands were steady. She felt a strange calm. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, clear certainty. This wasn't an ending. It was a liberation. Sarah, who had been spared, rushed over, her eyes wide with horror. "Oh my God, Clara. I'm so sorry. This is so unfair." Clara looked at her friend and offered a small, genuine smile. It was the first unforced smile Sarah had seen from her in months. "Don't be sorry," Clara said, her voice clear and firm, no longer a whisper. "This is the best thing that could have happened to me." She packed her single box of personal items. A framed photo of her cat, a lucky succulent, her favorite pen. As she walked out of the Innovate Solutions office for the last time, she didn't look back at the place that had made her feel invisible. She looked forward, toward the city gleaming in the rain. The ghost had been set free, and she was ready to build an empire they would never be able to ignore. The first month of freedom was terrifying. Clara's apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage of uncertainty. The severance pay would only last so long. The solid worker was now just another unemployed statistic in a crowded market. But Clara had a plan. While everyone at Innovate Solutions had been talking, she had been building. In her quiet hours, she had developed a proprietary project management software she called Silent Partner. It was designed for people like her, the doers, the builders, the ones who hated wasteful meetings and redundant emails. It streamlined communication, automated tedious tasks, and its interface was so intuitive, it felt like magic. She spent her days refining the code and her nights cold emailing potential clients. The rejections were swift and brutal. "Too niche. We're happy with our current system. The market is saturated." Doubt began to creep in. Maybe Brad was right. Maybe she was just a solid worker, not an innovator. Maybe her quiet nature was a liability in the loud, aggressive world of entrepreneurship. Then, she got a reply. It was from the IT director of a mid-sized marketing firm, a woman named Lena Petrova. Her email was short and to the point. "Your software solved a problem I've been complaining about for years. My team spends more time in status meetings than doing actual work. Can you demo this for us tomorrow?" Clara's hands trembled as she typed her reply. "Yes, absolutely." The demo was held over a video call. Lena's team, a group of tired-looking creative people, stared at their screens with skeptical expressions. Clara took a deep breath. This was it. She couldn't be the ghost now. She began to speak, and something remarkable happened. When she talked about her software, about efficiency and clarity and giving people their time back, her voice didn't waver. The passion she'd buried for years at Innovate Solutions poured out. She wasn't selling. She was solving. She was speaking their language. She saw the change in their faces. The skepticism melted into interest, then into excitement. At the end of the call, Lena smiled. "Clara, that was the most productive 30 minutes I've spent all month. We'll take it. Send over the contract." When the payment hit her bank account, a sum for a 6-month license that was more than her monthly salary at Innovate, Clara sat on her apartment floor and cried. They weren't tears of sadness, but of vindication. She had done it. She had created something of value, and someone had paid real money for it. That first client led to another, through a referral. Then another. Lena became her biggest champion, introducing her to other frustrated managers in her network. Clara's one-woman operation, which she officially named Quiet Force, began to grow. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. The silence she had cultivated wasn't empty. It was fertile ground, and her business was blooming in it. A year after being laid off, Quiet Force was no longer a one-woman show. Clara had hired 2 remote developers and a part-time customer support agent. Her software was being used by over 50 companies, and the revenue was growing exponentially. She worked from a cozy, sunlit co-working space, her days filled with productive calls and deep work, a world away from the noisy political arena of her old office. One afternoon, her phone buzzed. It was Lena. "Clara, you are not going to believe this," Lena said, her voice giddy. I just got off the phone with a desperate account manager from Innovate Solutions. Clara's blood ran cold. The name was a relic from a past life. What? Why? They're circling the drain, Lena explained. Turns out, laying off all their actual talent was a bad business move. Their internal systems are a mess. Projects are failing. They're losing big clients. This guy, Brad, was practically begging me to sign a new contract. I told him we'd switch to a new, far superior system called Quiet Force. You should have heard the silence on the other end of the line. It was beautiful. Clara hung up, her mind reeling. Innovate Solutions was failing. The house of cards Brad had been building had collapsed without its foundation. A fierce, ambitious idea began to form in her mind. It was audacious. It was borderline insane. But the more she thought about it, the more it felt like destiny. She called her lawyer. I need you to look into something for me. The financial status and ownership structure of a company called Innovate Solutions. And it needs to be discreet. The report came back a week later. It was worse than she'd imagined. The company was drowning in debt, its technology was obsolete, and the founders were desperate to get out. They were looking for a buyer, but their asking price was plummeting by the day. Clara looked at the numbers, then at her own company's healthy bank balance. She could do it. With a strategic loan and her own capital, she could acquire Innovate Solutions. She wouldn't be saving it. She would be absorbing it. She would be taking the place that had discarded her and making it her own. She instructed her lawyer to make an offer through a shell corporation. She didn't want them to know who was buying until the very last second. The ghost was about to become the owner. Inside the beleaguered offices of Innovate Solutions, panic had become the new normal. The once bustling open floor plan was now dotted with empty, dusty desks. The air smelled of stale coffee and failure. Robert, the CEO, paced in his office, while Brad sat slumped in a chair, looking defeated. We have one offer, Robert, Brad said, running a hand through his disheveled hair. It's from a holding company called Apex Ventures. It's a lowball offer, but it's the only one. We have to take it. The creditors are at the door. Who are they? Robert asked, his voice weary. I've never heard of them. Does it matter? It's a lifeline. The lawyers worked quickly. The due diligence was performed. The offer from the mysterious Apex Ventures was the only thing keeping the lights on. The deal was set to be signed on a Friday afternoon, a grim echo of the day the mass layoffs had begun. Robert and Brad arrived at the sleek, modern offices of the law firm, representing the buyer. They were led into a conference room, with a stunning view of the city. Sitting at the far end of the long, polished table was a woman. She had her back to them, looking out the window. Your representative from Apex Ventures will be with you shortly, the paralegal said, closing the door. The woman turned around. Robert froze. Brad's jaw went slack. The air was sucked out of the room. It was Clara. She looked different. The shy posture was gone, replaced by a relaxed, confident grace. She wasn't wearing the frumpy cardigans from her old cubicle. She was dressed in a sharp, elegant pantsuit. Her gaze was steady and direct, no longer hidden behind a fringe of hair. Hello, Robert, Brad, she said, her voice calm and clear, carrying easily in the silent room. Clara? Brad sputtered, his face a comical mask of confusion and dawning horror. What are you doing here? Are you the paralegal? A small, cool smile touched Clara's lips. No, Brad. I'm not the paralegal. She gestured to the stack of documents on the table. I'm Apex Ventures. I'm the one buying your company. The silence that followed was absolute. Robert looked like he'd been shot. Brad just stared, his brain refusing to process the information. The quiet girl. The ghost. The one he'd laid off without a second thought. She wasn't just back on her feet. She was standing on the mountain of their failure. And she was about to plant her flag. The news ripped through the skeleton crew left at Innovate Solutions, like a shockwave. Clara? Quiet Clara. She bought the company. It was the only thing anyone could talk about. The atmosphere was a toxic mix of disbelief, fear, and for a few, a thrilling sense of schadenfreude. On Monday morning, Clara walked through the familiar glass doors of her old office for the first time as the owner. She wore the same sharp pantsuit, and she carried a sense of purpose that seemed to alter the very air around her. The receptionist, a woman who had always ignored her, stammered a nervous, "Good morning, Ms. Good morning, Clara." She called an all-hands meeting in the same space where Robert had announced the layoffs. The remaining employees filed in, their eyes wide, staring at the woman on the platform who used to sit silently among them. Clara looked out at the sea of anxious faces. She saw Sarah, who was beaming with pride. She saw a few others who had been kind to her. And she saw the rest, the ones who had followed Brad's lead and treated her as insignificant. "Good morning," she began, her voice amplified but still calm. "I know this is unexpected. My name is Clara Evans. Many of you know me. I sat in that corner cubicle for 5 years, She pointed, and every head turned. I was a solid worker. Reliable. I was also laid off because this company believed it needed to keep the, quote, talent that drove the business forward. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Brad was conspicuously absent. That experience was the best thing that ever happened to me, she continued. It forced me to bet on myself. I started a company called Quiet Force. We built project management software that actually works. And now we own this. She let the statement hang in the air. This isn't about revenge. This is about rebuilding. The culture of loud talk and quiet work is over. The culture of taking credit for other people's labor is over. Starting today, we are merging with Quiet Force. We are focusing on substance, on creation, on respect. There will be a full audit of all projects and contributions from the past 2 years. Bonuses and promotions will be based on that audit. A wave of excited murmurs went through the crowd. The people who had actually done the work were sitting up straighter. For those who are ready to build something real, I am excited to have you, Clara said. For those who aren't, your severance packages will be generous. She dismissed the meeting. As people filed out, buzzing with the news, Clara saw Robert standing in the back, his briefcase in his hand. He gave her a small, resigned nod and walked out the door for the last time. The takeover was complete. 3 months later, the office of the newly merged Quiet Force Solutions was unrecognizable. The oppressive gray cubicle walls were gone, replaced with an open, airy layout with comfortable collaboration spaces and, crucially, soundproofed focus pods for deep work. The constant, anxious buzz had been replaced by a calm, purposeful hum. Clara had kept her promise. The audit had been thorough. The engineers and data analysts, the true quiet ones who had been overlooked, had received significant raises and were now leading project teams. The culture had shifted from performance to production. One afternoon, Clara was in her office, the same corner office that had once belonged to Robert, when her assistant buzzed in. "There's a Brad Jenkins here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment." Clara felt a flicker of cold curiosity. "Send him in." Brad looked like he'd aged 10 years. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and his confidence had been replaced by a desperate humility. "Clara," he said, standing awkwardly in her doorway. "The office looks great." "Thank you, Brad. What can I do for you?" He cleared his throat. I was hoping there might be a place for me here. I know I made mistakes. I see that now. But I have experience. I can manage accounts. I can." Clara let him flounder for a moment. Then she held up a hand, stopping him. Her gaze was not unkind, but it was unyielding. "Brad, you were right about one thing a year ago," she said calmly. "A company does need to keep the talent that drives the business forward." She paused, letting the words sink in. "That's why I had to let you go." The color drained from his face. He had nothing left to say. He nodded once, turned, and walked out of her office, and out of her life, for good. Clara turned her chair to look out the window at the city skyline. The quiet girl had not just bought the office. She had transformed it. She had proven that strength isn't always loud, that confidence can be found in silence, and that sometimes the most powerful transformation begins when the world stops looking at you. The ghost was now the heart of the machine, and the machine was finally running perfectly.